So, welcome to the next edition of the Rare Business Podcast. With me today, I have Mark Schaefer. Hi, Mark.
Hello, Adrian.
How you doing? You all right?
I couldn't be better.
Fantastic. Now, Mark, we conducted an interview. You conducted an interview for us before back in 2012, but this is our first audio interview we've done. So, can you remind the readers and listeners a bit about you and the work that you do?
Well, I think at my heart, Adrian, I'm a teacher in
Okay.
everything that I do. I teach at a university here in America. I of course blog,
Mm-hmm.
and I've written 3 books,
Mm-hmm.
and I also do speaking. And I think the central theme of everything I do is I look at it as opportunities to teach.
Okay. Well, you and I share some common ground because that was I have my background is as an economist, but I
Hmm.
also qualified as a teacher, and that was my first job. And I still retain and I do some teaching as well. I'm a visiting lecturer for a local university here,
Hmm.
so we have some common ground on that, which is
I
good.
I love it. It's very rewarding, and I think it keeps me sharp. Because you've got to stay on top of everything.
Well, that's true. That is very, very true. Now, you recently published a new book called Born to Blog with
Mhm.
Stanford A. Smith.
Yes.
Um, Can you tell us a bit about it and how it came about and sort of why you wrote it?
Well, Stan and I have been friends for 3 or 4 years. We started as social media connections, and I think Stanford is one of the most gifted thinkers and writers on the web.
Right.
And so the one talent I'll say that I have, Adrian, is I can recognize talent.
Okay.
And I saw that this guy was really something else. And so he actually was a guest blogger for me. He was a one of my contributing bloggers. I pay my contributing bloggers on my blog. So for a couple years he was a contributing blogger. We became friends, and he had this idea about creating kind of a human oriented book instead of a technology oriented book
Okay.
around blogging.
Okay.
And I shared his same passion because it was so frustrating for me to see so many people who should be blogging or had not been successful at blogging because they were really kind of focused on the wrong things, on the kind of the techie things. You can make the technology do anything you want.
Yeah.
It's really there's psychological hurdles, there are emotional hurdles, there are problems with just having the courage to do it. So I was being asked at the same time by my publisher. They wanted. I wrote a very successful book on Twitter called the Tao of Twitter, or some people pronounce it the Tao of Twitter,
Indeed.
TAO,
Yeah.
and it actually became the best-selling book on Twitter in the world because I took this very human approach, saying, "Look, it's not about hashtags and mentions. This is really what it's about." And so they wanted a follow-up book to that. So I mentioned it to Stan, maybe we could do this together.
Uh-huh.
And it was the easiest creative endeavor I've ever had.
Great
And
news.
to be honest, I had a little anxiety about doing something with a co-author. I've never done that before.
Sure.
But Stan and I were just completely aligned in our views. We had a few disagreements over some things that we were able to, massage and resolve. But he's just such a great writer, and we just complemented each other so very well. The book just flowed. It just flowed out. And when we turned it into the publisher, they said they had no recommended changes,
Oh,
and
brilliant.
that never happens.
No,
They
no,
said
indeed.
this is a great book. So we knew we were onto something.
That's fantastic. Now, in the book, you say you take a much, much more human approach to blogging. You
Hmm.
talk about the traits and the skills, the different blogging skills that it takes, or different, if you like, skills and different characteristics different bloggers have. Can you tell us a
Yeah.
bit about them and why you think it's important to understand the sort of blogger that you want to be?
Well, again, it was our way, Adrian, of reframing the idea about blogging. People think about, oh my gosh, blogging, I have to blog.
Yeah.
And when I teach my classes, I think, can you write a 500-word essay on something that interests you?
Yeah.
Now, a 500-word essay is one page double spaced.
Mm-hmm.
I could do that 10 minutes before class. Most people could.
Yeah.
And so, so if you reframe it to say, look, another way that we approached it is look at the basic ideas of of what blogging is about. Can you answer questions?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
answer questions every day. Can you help people?
Yes.
You
Yes.
know, and do you daydream about the future and what can be and what you hope for? Well, these are all natural human things. So we encourage people just to tap in to their innate ability to create content, because they're creating content in their minds and their hearts every single day. So what we wanted to do is say, look, if you are good at helping people,
Mm-hmm.
if you are good at teaching people or answering questions, those are all good skills that translate to blogging.
Yeah. I mean, I think that some of the skills that you talked about, or some of the types of bloggers you talked about the ones that are storytellers, the ones that are dreamers, the ones that are persuaders, teachers, the curators, those sort of things. Now, do you think that I guess it's better understanding what type of trait or characteristic best sort of resonates with you, and then sort of almost like trying to tap into that sort of that passion, that enthusiasm. But do you think that can change over time, and has it changed for you over time?
It has. I think it has changed for me as I've become more confident.
Right.
And there's a story that I tell in the book about kind of my aha moment with blogging, where I would say, Adrian, that I started out maybe as a persuader.
Right.
I come from a traditional marketing background in big companies,
Mm-hmm.
and so I thought that I would pontificate and I would teach my target audience key messages of the day,
Yeah.
and that didn't work.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough.
and and what happened over time, I started to relax,
Yeah.
and I started to. I was always rewarded when I brought my own personality into it, and I could see the power of storytelling.
Right.
People didn't want to hear a lesson, but they would hear a story. And I could actually teach a lesson by telling a story. Interesting.
Yeah.
But that took me. It took a long time for me to figure that out. That's another key idea in the book, is that blogging success, finding your voice, does not happen overnight. It may take months, even years of frustration. One of the first stories we have in the book is from a doctor that
Yeah.
blogged in London,
Uh-huh.
and he talked about how he had some success as a blogger, but then he kind of got bored. It was a mismatch, and it really, he couldn't find his voice, and then he switched topics, and all of a sudden he found his passion.
Wasn't he the one that was
And
talking about medical technology?
yes, medical
Right.
technology. And when you find your passion and you relax and have the courage to bring yourself into the story, something magical happens. Instead of finding your target audience finds you. You attract them
Yeah.
through your personality,
I think
through
yeah.
your stories, and that's a very important turning point.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things that you said there that resonate with me. I mean, I remember when I started my career as a teacher, I taught I was teaching at secondary school, and which is high school in the US, and I left there after a few years because I got offered a great opportunity, and the thing I thought to myself is that whilst I really enjoy the teaching, I knew that I was very young. I started teaching when I was 23, so I was effectively a stack of textbooks in front of my students in a way.
Oh yeah.
And so, which is hard. And so I thought, well, actually, wouldn't it be better? I was teaching economics and business and things, and I said, wouldn't it be better if I could go off and do some economics and do some business, and then I can come back and teach by telling stories.
Brilliant.
So, and unfortunately, I haven't actually got back there yet, although I am in different sort of guises. And then the other thing that you said about, speaking with passion and finding your voice is the thing that the best way I've ever had, or ever found rather, of describing what my blog is like is that I say to people, my blog is my public thinking digital notepad. And the reason
I love that. I love that.
And so what I tell people is that I don't write for anybody else but myself, because I say I've got this mind. I go around and I notice things, and therefore I always find that I do my best thinking once I've articulated things. Let's externalize them, and the very fact that my blog becomes like an archive of useful things that I can share with my clients, and if it just so happens to pick up an audience, then that's brilliant. That's fantastic. But I understand.
I love that characterization. In fact, I had an experience like that. I think this would really kind of illustrate what you're saying. I was doing some consulting with a big company, and they wanted me to help them with a social media sales strategy.
Okay.
Now I have a background in sales. I've had lots of very interesting sales jobs, but typically I've been thinking about social media in the realm of marketing and advertising. So this kind of forced me to think about, just putting myself back in those sales shoes and think about what are salespeople missing today? How can they really use this? Maybe even if their customers aren't big into social media any yet. So I started writing down some notes because I had to give this presentation, and I thought, well, this is going to make a great blog post. So just the chronicling my life and my thinking, because that's what I'm involved in right now. Helped me bring value to my readers. It helped crystallize my thinking. And the other thing that happened is I ended up writing these posts. Then I sent links to the posts back to my customer to say, look, I wrote these posts for you because this emphasizes the point I was trying to make in our workshops. Pass this around to your salespeople because I think this will help them. So now the customer is delighted because they're getting extra value. They've got a handout for their salespeople essentially. So and basically I was doing just as you said. I was more or less chronicling what was going on in my life right then.
Fantastic. So we talked about that things have changed now. I mean, so now primarily, why do you blog? Now, what's the raison d'etre of the blog for you personally?
That also has changed over the years.
Okay.
I'll tell you, really, it's joy.
Okay.
It's joy. It's the most fun thing that I do. If I could figure out how to make a living just doing nothing but blogging, I would probably do that. And it's kind of a two-edged sword for me because I feel so strongly that I can't do anything to compromise my integrity and the trust that I have with my readers. And so because of that, I haven't really done a lot of advertising programs. I haven't done any sponsored content. I mean, I've had lots of offers. So I really haven't directly monetized my blog, and as far as I know, I never will. But the blog opens up other doors, of course, for business. But it's fun. I mean, it's fun for me. It's a challenge. It's a intellectual challenge. It's a creative challenge. I'm very blessed to be at a point in my life where I can help people, and I can
Yeah.
see that response every day. Where people will come onto my blog and they'll write a comment. They said, "Were you reading my mind?
Yeah.
This is the very problem I've been struggling with, and this helps me so much. Oh, thank you for this blog post. I can take this into a meeting and show it to my customers because I haven't been able to explain this as well as you have." That is extraordinarily rewarding for me,
Yeah.
and it just brings a lot of joy to my life. And I just love the connections that I make,
Hmm.
the kindness that people show me on the blog, the amazing gifts I get every day through the comments that people leave.
Yeah.
So really, I mean, to me, it's just the business does come through the blog,
Yeah.
but for me, it's just fun.
So it's yeah. So the the subtitle or the invisible title of the blog is probably the Tao of blogging as well.
It very much so, because in the Twitter book I describe the path. And it's not just the success path for Twitter. It's the success path for social media, period.
Yeah.
If Because behind every social media success story, you will find these three things. One, meaningful content.
Yes.
Two, a relevant audience, because the content doesn't really work unless people engage with it, react to it, and share it.
Yeah.
And then third, authentic helpfulness.
Yes.
So if my blog was nothing but a big ad, nobody would read it.
No.
So people appreciate the fact that I'm really trying to put myself out there to help people through my experiences and my ideas. And so it's a living laboratory
Hmm.
in the social media mindset. And the other, here's an interesting nuance, Adrian.
Hmm.
Notice that in that social media success formula, those three things, I did not include search engine optimization.
No, that indeed, which is
And so, but so to me, that will come. And so I am the least optimized blogger in the world. I do literally no SEO at all, because my view is, and this is why I'm a living laboratory, that over time quality will win out. Over time, Google and the other search engines will reward high quality original content.
yeah.
And if you see every change, and I mean every single change Google is making, it's moving toward that.
Yeah.
So in the short term, someone who's playing with keywords and backlinks, they may create some short term spike. But in the long term, as I continue to build up this portfolio of original content,
Yeah.
I believe Google is going to get smart enough that they're going to say, okay, this is the real deal. This is where we need to send people for help.
I think that's absolutely fair, and I think there's been some very recent changes by Google around sort of backlinking and SEO optimization and things, which points exactly to what you're talking about, and also points to the idea that they want to see consistency and they want to see sort of longevity and things, and so there's no better time to get started if you haven't started already than now, because this is Google is our high street, or as our oracle, as it were, and it's therefore you have to, it will find you.
And to some it might sound like a naive point of view, but I really think it will work. That there's this battle going on between Google and the SEO professionals, and the SEO professionals are doing all these keyword strategies and backlinks, and essentially what they're trying to do is trick Google.
Yeah.
And Google is spending millions, if not billions of dollars to not be tricked.
Yes.
And so don't you think in the long term Google's going to look at a site like mine and go, look at this fella.
Mm-hmm.
He's not doing anything. He's just creating pure, helpful content. That is what we need around here. That's what we're going to reward. And it's obvious this person is authentic in what he's doing. He's not trying to game the system. And I believe that is where the world is heading. I think that is what is going to be rewarded. And in the long term, the people who are engaging in some of these spammy techniques or doing crazy things to get backlinks,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to continue to be punished by Google.
I think that's true. I mean, therefore, I mean, do you think that would you be advocating that every professional or freelancer or business, large or small, should we all be blogging?
Well, I take it a level a little above that.
Okay.
I think what the question that I pose to businesses is, first of all, I try to create an understanding of how important content is today
Right.
as a strategy. And I think the first question needs to be, what is your source of rich content?
Mm-hmm.
Now, notice I didn't go right to blogging because I want to look at the culture of the company, the capability of the company,
Yeah.
the structure of the industry. But I think you need some source of rich content, and generally that falls into one of three categories:
Okay.
a podcast,
Okay.
a blog,
Mm-hmm.
or a video series.
Okay.
Now, there might be some secondary opportunities like Pinterest. If you have a very visually oriented business, perhaps you can generate reach through something like Pinterest or even Instagram.
Uh-huh.
But generally, I think the the big buckets you need to look at are, is this a company that's text oriented? Do we have people who like to write and tell stories? Then maybe blogging. Is this a company that has a lot of video resources? Do we want to do how-to videos? Do we want to tell our stories visually through video?
Yeah.
That could be an opportunity. Podcasts growing like crazy. And if the market is already filled with blogs and videos, podcasting might be an option, because now that everybody's carrying a smart device around, a mobile device in their pocket, they're carrying a podcast radio station in their pocket too.
Sure.
So podcasts are a viable opportunity. So it's not just about content. I mean, content can be anything. Content can be a recipe. It can be a joke.
Yeah.
It can be a funny picture of a cat. But I think to really create a voice of authority that establishes business benefits in the long term,
Mm-hmm.
you need to have a blog, a podcast, or a video series.
Fantastic.
So that's I wouldn't narrow it down to blogging, but blogging for many, especially many small businesses, seems to be the most accessible route to go.
Yeah. And what do you find is the biggest barrier to people getting started, and sort of what sort of piece of advice would you give to people, trying to overcome that barrier?
Well, there are really three major barriers that I see.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is time.
Yep.
They said, well, look, we've already got a full plate. We can't do this too. And I'll give you an example of a company that's not really thinking the right way in this regard. I was working with this healthcare company,
Mm-hmm.
and they said, we spend $70,000 a month on full-page newspaper advertising.
Okay. Blimey.
And we have the sense that it's not working like it used to.
Okay.
Oh, really? Oh, really? Could it be that newspaper readership has declined by 50% in the last 5 years?
Yeah.
Now, So the idea here is, look, take an examination of what you're doing now
Mm-hmm.
and reallocate some of those resources. Take it from where people aren't, newspapers, to where people are, the social web.
Yeah.
So you need to, I think you need to reallocate. It's not fair to tell people, oh, do more, start blogging. You need to reassess where you are.
Yeah.
The second hurdle I see is, well, where do we get the content?
Yeah.
Where do we get the ideas? And that's a pretty big subject, but I've in my classes and also in this book, Born to Blog, we talk about all the different sources of content, all the different ways to get ideas. And even most companies are surprised when I point out to them how much content they already have.
Sure.
You know, they're already answering customer questions.
Yeah.
They're creating videos, they're creating slide presentations, they're doing speeches, they're doing financial presentations. So all of these, you just have to reframe it and
Yes.
say, okay, how do we repurpose this content? How do we tell the story in a new way?
Mm-hmm.
Then the third thing is really courage.
Yeah.
And that may be the biggest of all, because it takes some courage to put yourself out there and to become a publisher, to really to become a media company. And you know, even in a small way, that's what you're doing. You're creating content that's more or less permanent, or maybe semi-permanent, and searchable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are legal implications for that.
Yeah.
It's difficult to, you know, as a business person, I was taught to take my personality out of the issue. I was taught to take emotion and heart out of the sales process.
Yes.
It's all about making your quarterly numbers. It's
Yeah.
all about spreadsheets. And now, to be successful on the social web, to really stand out, you need to be human. And that's what people crave. They don't want logos. They don't want slogans. They don't want advertising. They avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
But they do want stories. They do want to find people, companies, and brands that will spend time helping them, that will help them make money, save time, have a happier life, have a more interesting life, have a healthier life.
Sure.
And so, and that's really the purpose of what we're trying to do with our content today.
I think that's right, and it reminds me of the there's an old saying which says it's not personal, it's only business, but that doesn't seem to hold anymore. It's because actually I think the saying should be reframed now and saying actually business is personal.
Well, I think and actually you just gave me a great idea for a new blog post.
Brilliant.
Because I'm thinking back about when I was a young person out of school, just getting into my first sales job, and I was so full of energy and passion, and basically it was beat out of me.
So you have to relearn that.
You have to relearn that.
That's fantastic.
I mean, I think it's true.
Yeah. So, Mark, I mean, just looking conscious of time, is that, I mean, I would advise anybody who's listening to this or is reading the notes that to go off and get hold of a book. But is there anything that you would, I mean, I have two questions I ask to end these podcasts. And the first one, is there anything that you'd like to add, sort of top tips for our readers and listeners before we start to wrap up?
Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me on here. This has been a great discussion and a lot of fun. And actually, we covered some ground today that no one's heard anywhere before. So yeah, did a great job with your interview.
Thank you.
But I think that if I had to leave listeners with just one piece of advice, it would be to try it, to do it, because it's difficult to get started.
Mm-hmm.
And the first blog post you write might be the most difficult blog post you write. It may be the worst blog post you write.
Yeah.
But you can only get better if you keep doing it. If you persist. You can only grow an audience by persisting and seeing that feedback, and you start to develop this sense of what resonates.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And I mean, I've had tremendous learning in that regard. And here's the first thing I learned, that it doesn't have to be a PhD thesis.
No.
You know? And I mean, this is probably something you experienced as a teacher as well. You know, when I started teaching and blogging and speaking, I thought, well, for these people to get value for their money, I just want to make this experience so dense with information, they're going to take so many notes, they'll think, wow, I really got my money's worth.
Yes.
And I had to evolve to say, look, that's not what people really want. They're not just going to learn from a PowerPoint slide with 10 bullet points on it.
Yes.
What they're going to remember is your story.
Yes.
And so just by telling a story with a little lesson at the end, that is a great blog post. And having the courage to do that is what will win in the end. But it took me a long time to understand that. So just try it. You don't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be something profound. Just start writing and create posts about your observations, what you're learning, what you're frustrated about, and you don't need to have all the answers. Most of my blog posts, I end it with saying, here's an issue, here's an observation. I don't really know what to do about this. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that spurs engagement, and so you have to have the courage to be imperfect and not have all the answers.
That's fantastic. So then, my final question, which I always end these interviews on, is this. Is there anything that you would like to shamelessly plug?
Well,
you can have two things if you like.
Well, we've already talked about my books. The one book that we didn't mention is Return on Influence.
Yeah.
Which is it's a fun book about how we as individuals and companies create power and influence on the web, which is quite a bit different than compared to how we create power and influence in the real world. So Return on Influence. And then I'd love for people to come by, check out my blog. It's at businessesgrow.com. I had to call it that because nobody could spell Schaefer. If I counted on people trying to spell my last name correctly, they'd never find me. So hopefully Businesses Grow is a little easier to understand. I've got tons of free stuff on there, videos and podcasts, and lots of blog posts in every type of marketing and social media category. And I'd love for people to stop by and say hello.
It's fantastic. Well, I'll make sure that all gets linked up and everything, and I'll completely endorse the blog and books and things because I think they're great, and I think the work that you do is great, Mark. So thank you very much for your time today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.